Well, hello. Here we are. I hope this is working. Welcome everyone to my live stream on this. Well, over here in Beirut, it's the 23rd of December, 8 a.m. And depending where you're from, I guess it's the middle of the night or the evening. I hope you guys are all doing well. Let's just see and wait a bit who's coming in. I need to close this window. Here we go. Um, yeah, so thanks everyone for joining, and thanks to everyone who will be joining later and watch this later. That's awesome. Thanks a lot to Suzanne, who is moderating the chat. Um, yeah, that's awesome. It was good to connect. Just yesterday we connected. And so, yeah, here we are. Now, I'm doing this for the first time. I hope this is going to go well. I hope the Lebanese internet won't let me down. And so, yeah, I'll just start by, introducing myself a bit. I mean, I've done a live stream around a year ago just as a trial, and since then the channel has grown quite a bit. So I want to just say a couple of things and answer questions that have come up repeatedly in the comment section. So my name is Lucas. I'm 38 years old. I'm married to Denise, and we have 3 wonderful kids. I love my family very much. Now, we're all from Switzerland originally, but we've lived in Beirut, Lebanon for nearly 10 years now. In March, it's going to be 10 years. And so Christian Rebel has asked yesterday in the post, under the post I put up, he asked, well, what brought us to Lebanon? So basically, we've around 11 or 12 years ago, both my wife and I, we felt a call to live and serve in Beirut in the Middle East, and so that's what we did. We packed our stuff, we moved to Beirut, and yeah, then what happened was basically, I mean, there are all sorts of things which I could elaborate on, but I try to kind of keep this on point. I basically connected to with a Lebanese believer who just opened his studio where he produced mainly audio content like Christian radio programs and stuff. And he was just getting himself into filmmaking. And then we started to put out like a short movie series, a Christian short movie series, like a creative Christian short movie series where we would retell the stories of Jesus in a like contemporary way. And then we started showing these movies around in the city, in cafes, at universities. We even went to cinemas twice. And from that, a Bible study grew. And now we've established like a Bible study for seekers and skeptics that meets every Thursday. Actually, it's going to be tonight again. There's a good amount of people, around 20 people show up regularly. There's a real sense of community there. We're going to celebrate Christmas together on Saturday. Like we do movie nights together. And yeah, there's a real community of people from all sorts of different backgrounds, Muslim background, Christian background, well, all sorts of different confessional backgrounds from within those religions. What unites most of them are that they are they're skeptical. They would describe themselves as agnostics or atheists, and but they are interested in reading the Bible together. So we basically read the Bible. We read one chapter an evening, and then the space is open. We meet in a cafe, by the way. The space is open for people to ask questions, and off it goes. Now, we we produce media like in Arabic. So basically, when we came here 10 years ago, my wife and I, we had one child, Aaron, our oldest son, and we spent like the first months, 1.5 years learning Arabic. I preached my first sermon in Arabic, I think after 9 months. It was quite stressful, and my Arabic wasn't that good, I guess. But that's when I went first up on the pulpit to preach in Arabic. So yeah, we produce media for the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association and for other Christian ministries here, and lead campaigns, online campaigns in the Arab world. And then basically 1.5 years ago, that's when I thought, well, let's do an apologetics channel in English, and that's when this whole thing kicked off. We at the time we had been talking about doing like an apologetics profile in Arabic for a while, but then we said, well, let's go and go for it in English. So that's us. Again, Swiss by origin, but have lived in Beirut, Lebanon for the last 10 years. We love it here. I mean, it's a rough place, it's a challenging place, but it's also a beautiful place. And we can definitely see God moving here. And we're both, we're just happy and feel privileged and blessed to be here and do what we do. So yeah, another question I was asked is how I became a Christian. I grew up in a Christian family. My dad used to be a preacher, a lay preacher in an Anabaptist church. But so one of the things I remember from very young on, from an early age, is that, well, this thing has to, I either take this thing personally or I don't. Like, it's not because my family is Christian that I go through as a Christian. I have to take this seriously myself. That's probably the first thing I remember from my childhood. The first thing I realized when it comes to what's important about the faith. Hello everyone. Hi Cody. Hi Peter. Hi Jake. Bonjour. Guten Tag. Yes. Hello. What happened? So I'm the middle child of 5. My 2 older brothers, they became believers probably. They made a decision to follow Christ at an early age, 9ish or 10ish. And when I became a teenager, I really didn't want to have anything to do with the faith. I was kind of, well, some people would say I was kind of the black sheep in the family. I went off and had different friends. I was interested in different things. I was one of the things that actually kept me from the faith as I entered teenage years was that I felt the church, as I knew it, the church really didn't care about social issues. And about back in those days, for me, what was big is I felt the church didn't care about environmental issues. I was big on, well, I was involved with, Greenpeace groups and environment protection groups and animal rights groups and that sort of stuff. And what bothered me, what kept me from the faith is actually, these things, they were very important to me. And I felt the church, or Christians as I knew them, they didn't care about this stuff. So I felt, well, why should I care about Christianity? So that kept going for a while. And then until I think I was 19 or 20, when I just picked up a Bible. I hadn't read the Bible by then, like for a long time by then. I thought, well, I didn't have a job. I didn't have, I was on a break. And I basically took a Bible and started reading just for myself, by myself. Started reading the New Testament, read probably through the whole New Testament. And I, again, around at the age of 19, 20, I felt a conviction that I need Jesus. And that's where my journey started as a follower of Christ. But then, like a whole lot of questions started to come up. I had to figure out, well, how do I reconcile now following Christ with those issues that still concerned me, the environment, social justice, and all that stuff. And that's where my journey started, and where I started to think through things more deeply. And what got me into apologetics, which is another question that was put up, that basically happened as we came to. So I started getting into apologetics on a low-key level when I became a Christian, because again I felt like there was a whole range of questions I need to figure out for myself, especially when it comes to how does Christianity relate to culture, and how does Christianity relate to, again, those issues that concern me. But what happened is, so as we came to Beirut and we kicked off this Bible study after a while, these apologetics related questions, they popped up just very naturally. So that just naturally got me. I figured, well, I better dig deep into these issues. That was again around 10 years ago, 8, 9, 10 years ago, and I started digging into this stuff. Just on a personal level, reading quite a bit. And then, a bit about my background to kind of go back a bit more, because I was asked that question too, I think. So I was trained as a landscape designer, gardener in Switzerland. I then did a degree in theology in the UK, in England. in biblical and intercultural studies. And so later on, again, as I started my apologetics journey in a more serious and focused fashion, what I did, I did a couple of courses with RZIM back then, those online courses they provide or used to provide. And I then started picking up things, certificate courses at Biola in the US. And from there, I actually did a master's in Christian apologetics at Biola University in the US, and so that connected me quite a bit to the debate and apologetics and Christian thinkers and philosophers scene, in real life or in on YouTube and in the whole online world. I love that, to be connected and to have a real just personal connection and relationship with people even online. Again, even though I've never met them. A Mennonite church now. So so I grew up in an Anabaptist church. That's where I come from. They are related to the Mennonites, but we can talk about that maybe some other time. The Anabaptist tradition is actually, like, I once during my studies I delved into it deeper. I had to write an assignment on again the Anabaptists. It's quite the beginnings of the movement were actually quite interesting. Again, especially with regard to how the Anabaptists related to culture. So let's see what else we have here. So I've got a question again from yesterday. How do I define God? Vinny Gigidi. How do I define God? What does the sentence God exists mean to you? Now, to define God, I mean, there are possible, like, a number of ways you can do this in a number of aspects you could focus on. One of the ways in which I define God is to describe him as the maximally greatest being, a spirit being, and like an intelligent mind, a disembodied mind, and who exists as a trinity of persons within one nature. To say that God exists means to me, well, that God is real, or that it is true. The proposition that God, is there, or God exists, is true. That's what it means for me to say that the sentence God exists, to utter that proposition. Now, what else do we have here? Thank you, Frank the Christian, for the super chat. I didn't actually know whether super chats work here, because in Lebanon, if I want to put up a super chat on someone else's live stream, that doesn't work. That feature is not allowed, or doesn't work if you access YouTube from Lebanon. But I'm glad to see that it works the other way around. Thank you so much, Frank. Question by Phoenix Potato. How would you respond to someone who asks, why didn't God in the beginning create all the believers in heaven and avoid all the suffering of this life? Well, I mean, God, the standard way, and this is probably a bit technical for people who hear this for the first time. The way I would answer this, or the way that this is answered often, is that God created human beings, or his relationship to human beings, with what is called an epistemic distance, in the sense that God couldn't, God gave people the space to actually go on discovery, to look out for him, instead of him creating human beings and creating a context in which his relationship with human beings takes place, where he is immediately or overwhelmingly present. And the reason for that is that if God didn't create or didn't allow for such epistemic distance, as it is called, again, epistemic in the sense of, well, how the way in which we get to know things, talking about how we know things is what epistemology does. And again, to say that God created epistemic distance means that God on purpose provided a certain space between him and human beings, certain, if you want, cognitive discovery space, so that people could actually embark on a journey and find him. And the reason for that is that if God didn't do that, if God would make himself overwhelmingly present, even today, not just in the beginning when he created all things and created human beings, that would mean that people, uh, wouldn't really have a choice whether, when it comes to whether they want to acknowledge God or not. Because if God, imagine if God, showed up tonight in your town, by writing something in the sky, "Hi guys, I'm God, I'm here. Please, believe in me. It must be clear to you that I exist." Then even if people didn't, even for those people who didn't actually want to enter, into a connection with God, they would kind of have no choice, because there he is revealing himself to them plainly and clearly and in their face. And so then what would happen is that people would essentially feign or fake loyalty, because again, God is there. Well, I can't escape the fact that he is here. Now I guess I have to come to terms with it. Otherwise, I won't make it to heaven, or I will enter hell or whatnot. And so it's a part of the epistemic distance issue, is part of the freedom that God gives people, to allow them to embark on a journey to discover him if they want to. And it allows it. So the way I would put it is that people has revealed enough evidence for people who are open to him and open to enter into a relationship with him. He has provided enough evidence for these people to find him, but he hasn't provided overwhelming evidence so that people who would never actually want to worship him and to follow Christ, that they would, be forced into a relationship with him by, again, the overwhelming data or evidence they're surrounded by. So that's how I would answer the question, and it relates as much to the question of why doesn't God reveal himself more clearly today, as it does to the question of why didn't God just create everyone in heaven right away. It would have taken significant freedom away from people, to freedom to actually choose to enter into a relationship with God. The thing is, God is really not interested in us just filling our minds or our brains with the information God exists. God is not interested in that. God is really interested in people surrendering to him and loving him and pursuing him. And that's a different thing. I mean, even, the Bible says, well, even the demons, they acknowledge and they shiver knowing that God exists. But that's not the point. That's not the purpose of human existence as God envisioned it. The purpose is for people to enter into a relationship with him. And that's quite a different ball game. You can acknowledge that something is real and yet still not want to have anything to do with it. But acknowledging that something is real and actually, again, embracing it or entering into a relationship with it or him or her, again, when it comes to human beings, same when it comes to the divine being, acknowledging that he is there and entering into a relationship is very different than just saying, well, God exists. Yeah, that's how I would go about this question. Warrior of the Most High, hello. Are you a young? No, I'm not a young Earth creationist. I'm glad you like my channel. Yeah, I guess I was actually thinking whether I should put up a couple of things about my intelligent design series, because, well, first of all, no, I'm not a young Earth creationist. Again, I believe in an old Earth, and I guess there's quite a bit of confusion out there when it comes to intelligent design and creationism, young Earth creationism, and all that sort of stuff. Intelligent design does not make a statement, well, very strictly speaking, about the age of the Earth. But most, as far as I'm concerned, most intelligent design theorists are old Earth creationists, and I'm definitely an old Earth creationist. Also, I mean, just very briefly, and I probably should do a live stream specifically on intelligent design. The difference between creationism and intelligent design theory is that creationism basically starts with the biblical data, is committed to starting with the biblical data and working it out from there to figure out, again, how did creation happen? How did the species come about and all that sort of stuff. Whereas intelligent design theory has a commitment to start with the scientific data and figure out, well, how the things come about. That isn't to say that intelligent design has no opportunity to converse with the biblical data, but it is to say that it is committed to work with the scientific data rather than with the biblical data. Again, that's just very briefly and in a nutshell how intelligent design and creationism are, well, differ, or how they relate. What else? Do I have any advice for new YouTubers who want to do Christian apologetics online? Well, I mean, yeah, I feel honored to be asked this question. I mean, I haven't been long in the game. I'm still learning my way. I think one of the things you want to do is you want to train, you want to teach yourself, or you need to check out channels that talk about how to do YouTube. I mean, I started off with just knowing nothing. I remember I contacted Cameron Bertuzzi from Capturing Christianity before I started out, like 2 months before I started out, and I asked him a question. I now realize it was such a stupid question, such a really basic question. But you really, if you want to get into this, I mean, go for it. It will take, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of thought, and you need to have a learning attitude. Just learn, well, how to create a good intro to your video. I'm still trying to figure that one out. What does a good thumbnail look like so that people actually click on your video? What are the topics that people are interested in? Again, something I thought, to be honest, when I put up my video on the Trinity in the Old Testament, I thought, man, people are going to be so interested in this. But it turned out, well, I guess they weren't that much interested in. I'm definitely interested in that sort of topic. I was passionate to write the script for the video and to produce it, but turns out people didn't like it as much as I thought they would. Jake Jacobs, Lucas, you're well thought out and make them understand. Thanks, Jake. That's so nice. Thanks for the super chat. Thanks for the encouragement. Really appreciate that. I mean, guys, I've put this out once on a post. I'm still figuring out whether I go too technical in my videos. I mean, I try to, I've sometimes told myself, and I find myself asking myself this question over and over again, whether I should just try and do more simple videos, more simple material. And then as I try to go about it, I figured, well, I just can't do it. I tend to go a bit technical. Now, what I hope, well, I do hope that even as I hope that I make things, understandable and digestible and accessible to as many people as possible without dumbing it down, while at the same time keeping, nuance and like figuring out the details of the topics and stuff. So I hope to do that, but I figured what I want to do in the future is I want to put up more shorts. In the next 2 weeks, I'm going to put up shorts. What I want to do is with the shorts, I try to put out very simple content, so to create a bit of balance. My normal videos are going to be, again, the way they have been, I think, so far, again, with more detailed analysis, whereas the shorts offer more snacky, concise, short material and answers or topics. Good. Does morality come? Guys, let me just see how I should go about this. Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks so much. Merry Christmas to you, and much love to your family and the newborn baby. I hope you guys are loving the harmony together and are having a good time. Let me see. I saw this other video. Does morality come from evolution? Well, I don't know whether this is related to my shorts I recently put up. I think basically the argument I put out there, and it was interesting. So if you haven't seen it, it's my last short that I've put up. It's I basically talk about the argument, or I mean, I act through the conversation of where the argument comes up that morality comes from evolution. Now, it's interesting that people have put up comments saying, well, that's a straw man. I've never heard this argument. Man, I've heard this argument I don't know how many times. I mean, we here in Beirut we do regular discussion nights together with an atheist club. I've mentioned this before. I was made an admin of an atheist discussion club here in Beirut due to a very close friendship between me and the guy who used to lead that group. We so basically we brought what happened is that we brought I got to know this atheist. They call themselves atheist intellectuals. They would meet once a week to discuss topics related to politics and religion and all that sort of stuff. And I became very good friends with their leader. We started journeying together. Sometimes we would have coffee, discuss Bible passages and whatnot. And then as he traveled, he basically said, hey, well, Lucas, I'd like to make you responsible for my club. I'd like to put you in charge of my atheist club. I said, well, I'd love that. I feel honored to be even asked that question, but I won't become an atheist just because of it. He said, well, sure, but I trust you and you're my friend, and I think you're the right person to lead this group. So now I'm in charge of an atheist intellectuals profile. And what we basically do is we gather people once a month for discussions, philosophical discussions pertaining to the faith, the science, and philosophy, and all of that. We used to do that in my house when we still used to live in the center of Beirut. We would have, 25 or 30 people cram into our living room for those Saturday night discussions. Like often people would stick around till 2 a.m. on Sunday. Which is awesome. Now it's happening in my friend's house who lives in the center of Beirut. So here's why I'm saying this. I've heard this argument, I don't know, over and over again. And that people are saying, well, morality has been come about through evolution. And so there simply cannot be anything objective about it. In fact, it's even Michael Ruse, an atheist philosopher, I think he's a cool guy, who says that morality came about through evolution. He literally says, I think I can remember it even word by word. His statement is, morality, or more strictly our sense of morality, is an illusion fobbed off on us by our genes to get us to cooperate. Now, here again, I've heard this over and over again. Morality came about through evolution, therefore it's not objective. Now, again, for the sake of argument, as I say in that video, for the sake of argument, I'm happy to go with saying morality came about through evolution, but that has nothing to do with the question of whether moral values are objective or matters of objectivities, because to say that morality came about through evolution, or our moral knowledge came about through evolution, is to make a statement about epistemology. Again, as we talked about before, it's a statement about how we came to know our moral knowledge. But that has nothing to do with the question of moral ontology. Okay, epistemology is how you come to know, is about how we come to know about things. And ontology is about, well, the things that really are, things that really exist. So we can, and these things, they are not, they're not related in the sense that, well, if you take a certain epistemological pathway, that is evolution in this case, we come to know about moral issues through evolution. That has nothing to do with the fact that morality is still, can still exist objectively. And so I don't believe that our morality was primarily, results primarily from evolution. I'm happy to admit that we've learned certain things as a human race, but I believe that primarily our sense of morality is given to us by God as part of what it means to be created in his image. That's how I would put it. But then again, for the sake of argument, I can go with the skeptic and say, well, okay, morality results from evolution, but that has nothing to do with the question of whether the realm of morality is objective or subjective. What are your, just going through the, yes, Harry, exactly. People should stop mixing up moral ontology and moral epistemology. That's exactly the point here. Why? Harry, Deflate, why does Oppy's metaphysics not work according to you? I have to admit, I haven't read enough of Oppy. I've seen some of his stuff. And I've read a couple of his articles, but I can't make, I'm not I'm not versed enough in his metaphysics to make a statement about that. I'm sorry. Just in case you're wondering, sorry, just looking for this other question that was put up. What are my thoughts on Adam and Eve by a fancy handsome giraffe? Do you believe they were real? Do you believe in polygenism? I believe, well, at some point, the way I see it is that at some point in history, there must have been the first human beings, and I mean, this is completely regardless of the fact of where's the difference between hominid creatures or human creatures and all of that stuff. At some point, given that we talk about human beings, it means that in history there was a point in time when the first human beings popped up on the stage of reality, so to speak. And in this sense, I think it makes complete sense to say that there were one or two human beings who were the first human beings. Now, I believe that I haven't looked yet into Craig's work in detail, at least not in detail at least, but I definitely understand, and I'm definitely with him and with those people who say that there is, Genesis is like is prose or poetry, and or has at least those aspects to it, those mythological aspects. And this is not to say that these stories aren't real or these things didn't happen. It's just a way of describing the literature that still makes statements about reality. But to me, that again, to say that the Adam and Eve story or Genesis story has mythological and metaphorical aspects to it, or metaphorical twist to it, or an underpinning even, that has nothing to do with saying, well, that's why it's not real. I mean, it's just, we're not saying, well, metaphor or myth is unrelated to a reality. We're making a statement about the genre or the rhetoric that is used to talk about the real world. And so in this sense, yes, I believe Adam and Eve were real, because even if you're not a believer in Genesis or in the Bible, you would still, again, I think this is by pure logic, if you would still want to or have to affirm that, given that you talk about human beings or that human beings came to exist, well, at some point there must have been something like the first human family walking the face of the earth. That's how I kind of generally go about it. Yeah, thanks guys for the feedback. Thanks, Carlos. El Hakim, the wise one in Arabic. Why do you think, Charlie, why do you think you were an atheist? Well, here's back, or so is this question for me? Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, back in the days, I was when I didn't commit to following Christ yet, it was not that I was not so much concerned with the question of whether God exists or not. I guess somehow I felt, well, he probably does. But I was much more concerned with, again, what I would call a cultural and a personal issue, which is that, here they are, the Christians and the churches, which I know, and all they do is caring about souls and sin and salvation. But none of them cares about, it seemed to me, or that's the impression I had, none of them cares about, again, animal rights and human rights and issues of oppression and whatnot. So for me, it was like, well, for me, the issue was basically, well, I don't care so much whether God exists or not. But as long as those who say that he does exist don't care about the things that seem pretty like pressing and important, to me at least, and to many other people as well, I felt, well, I shouldn't even get involved with that question or with that crowd and with that philosophy or belief in the first place. So yeah, that's how I thought about belief in God back in those days. Okay, let me see. If I jumped over one of your questions, just put it in again, and I hope I'm just trying to get Cody's. Uh, Sorry, guys. Okay. Sorry, Cody. I'm not getting your question there. One of the others, if you wanna maybe if you wanna put it out again, or reword it, that would probably help me. I'm sorry. Uh, Digi Vinji Vini GGD asked me another question in the post. Oh no, sorry, that's Daily Net, about the Trinity. In your video on the Trinity, I say, or you say, there is no contradiction in worshiping a triune God, since he would be one. One what? That is God, divine in nature, and three who's, three persons, Jesus, Father, and the Spirit. Still, wouldn't this be the same for polytheists that worship multiple who's that possess the same nature? So, yeah, that's a very good question. People are basically, so this is a comparison between me saying, uh, the Christian or the follower of Christ relates to God in that he relates to one being, one nature, a being who has one nature but three persons. And now DailyNet is asking, well, isn't this exactly the same thing for polytheists? They relate to several gods, or they relate to one divine, but just to many different gods. I think the difference is the following. It's we are saying, this is a very good question. We are saying that God is one, again, God is one in nature and three in persons. Now you don't get, so this is a one of a kind thing. Christianity makes the claim that this state of affairs is nowhere else to be found, or in nothing else to be found in all of reality. And so that's why, for example, some people have made this comment under that video. They said, well, the Trinity is basically like us as humanity, or as human beings. Is we are several persons. We're, I don't know, 6-7 billion persons walking the face of the earth, but we have one nature, one human nature. Now that analogy, it isn't an accurate analogy for the following reason. It's true that we are one kind. I mean, we are humankind, but I mean, in the end, I don't have exactly the same nature as any other person. I mean, Lucas, both in his physical makeup and in his like mental makeup or soul makeup, if you want, is different in nature than Max or John. So we don't share 100% the same nature. We share some things in our essence, so to speak. We share some of the same. Well, to a certain extent, you could say that we share, for example, the fact that we have two eyes, both of us, but we don't share exactly the same nature. We are not identical in nature, and so the same applies to polytheism. Polytheism doesn't say that, well, the God X is the same in nature as God Y. They're both divine, so that's one. They share that trait, but they are not identical in nature. They're different in nature, and so but that is not what is claimed about the Trinity. We are saying that the Godhead or the divine is one, is one, and the nature that the Son has, and the nature that the Spirit has, and the nature the Father has, they're all one and the same identical nature, and yet they are different persons. That's what we are saying, and that's why the relationship of the polytheist to the pantheon of gods is different than the relationship of the Christian to the triune God. The Christian relates to three persons who have one identical nature, whereas the polytheist relates to different gods, many different gods who are, if you want, different persons, but they don't share one and the same identical nature. I think that's how these things are to be differentiated. Yeah, so This was it about the Trinity. Let me see what else. Okay, now Cody, what do you think of the... Okay, God is a being greater than existence beyond higher spatial... his nature into true reality, and Jesus the bridge between... yeah. Okay, I don't... Okay, I'm trying to pick up what Cody put up here. I mean, I don't know if you're... So I guess the point that the Incarnation is making, and I mean, this is a big topic, but what it really boils down to is that God, well, the divine nature takes on a human, like a human form or a human body, human flesh. Jesus becoming man, or the second person of the Trinity becoming man, is to say that yes, so the divine nature, it remains a divine nature, but it picks up, so to speak, the second person of the Trinity picks up a second nature that is a human nature. So you have God, again, who is beyond all, who is beyond the actual world, if you want, as you put it, the world that is created. God, who is beyond space and time, like taking on himself like a spatial body, and everything that comes with it, and entering into spatial reality in a body. That's so that's how I would put this. I hope this helps. Yeah. Now, did I miss any? Did I miss any questions here? Well, let me see. Wellmaker, DSW 2315 Wellmaker. Since he is God the Father and God the Son, is the Holy Spirit God the Mother? Well, that's a good question. Someone sent me an email asking that question. No, I don't think so. Some people try to make that argument linguistically. They're saying, well, the Spirit, the pronoun for the Holy Spirit is female, but that's not even true. I mean, it's not true in Hebrew and in Greek. I mean, in Greek, I looked into this. I think in Greek it is actually true. Well, anyway, it doesn't hold up linguistically. In Hebrew, it's not true. And God, the Spirit, I think the motivation for making the Holy Spirit feminine is because of, gender issues. You want to make God, a fair, like you want to present God in fair terms when it comes to, again, gender justice and gender equality and all of that stuff. But I think the problem is, again, the text really doesn't allow us to make the Holy Spirit feminine. I mean, we're talking about the Spirit being, which means that it is beyond gender anyway. And second, it's, God the Father, if you want to make God the Father like a father figure as masculine, even that is problematic, because God talks about himself. I mean, God the Father, Yahweh in the Old Testament, talks about himself in metaphors that are feminine. I mean, God in Ezekiel 16. No, sorry, not Ezekiel 16. That's where he talks about Israel, about his bride and about his daughter. But God does talk about himself in Isaiah about giving birth, to his people. And being in labor. So God takes, and Jesus talks about himself in the Gospel of Luke, where about trying to gather the people of Jerusalem under his, like a hen gathers its chickens under its wings. So he compares himself to a female, to this female hen role, and God the Father describes him, like compares himself metaphorically in female terms. So I don't quite see the reason why the Holy Spirit should need to be made female or given a female twist. So again, because even God the Father and God the Son, they take upon themselves metaphorical descriptions that are that describe a female role rather than a male role. Okay. Let's go on. What's your response to people who say that Christ's death on the cross is not intense or painful enough to save an eternal destiny in hell? And what's my favorite sports and team? My favorite sports is football. I mean, or I don't know if you call it soccer in the US. I used to play football quite a bit, and then stopped for a while. My wife organized for there to be a family football in our neighborhood once a week on Tuesday nights. We play football with kids and adults. It's quite fun. So after quite a couple of years, I'm getting myself into football again. I used to ride the bicycle quite a lot. So I grew up in Switzerland. I grew up in a very small village, like far away from town, and I had from the age of 11 or 12 when I entered high school, like I had to ride my bicycle to get to school for half an hour. I mean, all like year in, year out, whether it was snowing, raining, or whatever. It was just like I had to go by bicycle. Yeah, which was that shaped me quite a bit. It was good. So I actually used to ride my bicycle in Beirut as well up until 3 or 4 years ago. I would go to the office by bicycle, but I've stopped. So yeah, I do like bicycle riding. I like hiking, but I think my favorite sports is football. I don't have a favorite team. I used to support. People may not like me anymore for saying this, but I used to support Manchester City. I really like that team back in the days. Now I just follow football here and there, but I don't support one team in particular. Now, people who say that Christ's death on the cross is not intense or painful enough to save an eternal destiny in hell. Well, I mean, it's not. I mean, the claim is not that Christ has to suffer. Suffer the same pain or go through exactly the same pain as in the experience of pain to save people. What the Bible claims is that Christ takes upon himself the punishment for sin on behalf of human beings, and he pays the price on our behalf. On a side note, I do believe in penal substitution. I do believe that penal substitution is the key biblical framework through which the cross is viewed. I mean, I do see that there is, the power struggle, and that the cross says something about Christ defeating the powers. I do believe that it says something about shame, but I do hold that penal substitution, the view that Christ is crushed for us and pays the penalty on behalf of us, is the key framework through which the Bible presents what the work that happens and is accomplished at the cross. So I don't think the Bible focuses or makes a statement about Christ experiencing the exact, again, identical amount of pain or suffering that human beings, suffer, and that he goes through that instead of us. Again, as in the physical pain, if you want, I don't think that's something that the Bible cares about, because you could even say, were there more horrible torture methods? Could Jesus have been tortured even more severely? I think, yeah, possibly. I mean, definitely the cross is a very severe method of execution, used to be during Roman times, but it can be argued that there might have been even more severe ways in which the body of Jesus could have been put in even more pain. And so I don't think that the Bible makes a statement or cares about showing that Christ has experienced this level of pain, so that he can save us from the pain that people will experience, or he can save people from the pain they will experience in hell. I think the pain is significant. The pain of the cross is significant. Sorry, there's light coming in here. But in the sense that it shows the severeness or the seriousness of sin. I think this is what the pain or the messiness of the cross really shows. It's that's how serious sin is. That's what sin does to people. That's what sin did to the Son of God, the God-man, Jesus Christ, because it's so ugly. I think that's the picture the cross presents. Sin creates or causes ugliness and devastation and destruction, to the utmost degree, again, even to the point of death. But I don't think that you want to go down the route of, well, did Jesus really suffer enough, or the identical amount that humanity goes through, or that a person will go through in hell? Yeah, I hope this helps. I hope this was clear enough. I guess I rumbled away a bit here. I'm sorry. Super chat. Thank you, Benjamin. My opinion of the current status of Christianity in Switzerland. Well, that's an interesting question. I'm quite disconnected from what's happening in Switzerland. I'm not a person who reads the news regularly. I haven't read the news in the Swiss news for around a year. I'm just too lazy. I also feel, and so this is a bit of a couple of things about me personally. I feel very much at home here in Lebanon. I'd be disingenuous if, or not quite honest or clear if I said, well, I feel like a Lebanese, because culturally, I was raised a Swiss. I guess I have a very Swiss mentality in many respects. I definitely took on certain things from Lebanese culture and how I go about things and think about things. There's a couple of things I really appreciate when it comes to how people here think about life and relationships and that sort of stuff. So how the current status of Christianity in Switzerland, I think in general, most people in society they just don't care. They're not interested enough. And I think the state of the church is that it's struggling to be, to speak into culture. I think there are churches who are really relevant. They're out there. They have their people out there. They engage with people in a healthy and relevant way. But I think in general, I think this is a problem in the body of Christ worldwide, is we struggle to be just in the scene, culturally immersed in where people are at, living real relationships, really walking with people. And I think that's the case in Switzerland too. Again, take it with a grain of salt, because I just don't follow up so closely with what happens in my home country. What else? Let me see. I'm sorry, guys. Just going through the chat here. Hi, Air Church. Good to see you here. I'm concerned with Paul being a false apostle. What are your thoughts on the difference in the gospel and Jesus' gospel? I don't think there's that many differences. There are differences in emphasis. Paul develops teaching and structure and instruction for the church. And Jesus, obviously, in his day, there was no church yet. In the sense that the fellowship of people, or the body of people who believed that the risen Christ has saved, provides salvation for all. That only happened after Jesus ascended into heaven and the Holy Spirit descended upon the first disciples. So it's nothing but natural that Paul talks about different things than Jesus does. How do you handle marriage in the church? How do you handle your leaders? These are just things that Jesus didn't have to talk about yet, because no church was around. So I wouldn't get too hung up on the difference there. And when it comes to Pauline theology, I don't personally see where he deviates from what Christ teaches. Again, unless you want to call a difference of emphasis a deviation, but I don't think that would be a fair assessment. So that's how I see it. What are my views on Thomas Aquinas? Well, I don't believe. I've looked into his, the key doctrine there of divine simplicity. I don't. Again, I have looked into this quite a bit, but I need to look into it more. But I believe at the present, I don't subscribe to the Thomistic view of divine simplicity. That's that's one of the things I can say at present about my thoughts to Thomas Aquinas. Um, yeah. Um, what else? What are doctrines we can disagree on? Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, all the I guess all the doctrines that are not core doctrines. Now the question is obviously, well, what are core doctrines and what are not core doctrines? I mean, core doctrines for me, they, well, again, to put like a very big and complex topic as briefly as one can in a YouTube live stream, core doctrines are the doctrines that relate to the nature of God. And I mean, since we've talked about the Trinity, like that relate to the nature of God and well, the persons of God. Well, basically the Trinity. I think the Trinity is a core doctrine. Again, a core doctrine would be the nature of Jesus. I think this is important. That Jesus was both fully God, fully man. A core doctrine would be the human condition. Are we, are we basically good? Are we essentially good, or are we essentially bad? I believe Christianity teaches the latter. A core doctrine is, how is salvation accomplished? How do you get reconciled to God? And again, part of that, as I mentioned before, is penal substitution. I would call that a core doctrine, actually. And then how is how do again, this relates to what I said already, how do the persons of the Trinity relate to salvation? How is, what's the work of the Holy Spirit? What's the role of the Holy Spirit? What's the role of the Father? What's the role of the Son in accomplishing salvation? I think these are core doctrines which need to be, well, which we should be agreeing on. And then stuff outside of everything else, well, I wonder whether I forgot something. This is a rather heavy statement I'm making here, but more or less everything outside of those things can be disagreed on, I suppose. Again, nature of God, I mean, that includes Trinity, state of human beings, the human condition, and what is salvation and how it is accomplished. I think, yeah, this probably sums it up. Shall I take one more question? How long have we been going here? Okay, nearly an hour. Yeah, I just want to make a statement again about what about the cross. I do believe that it's significant that Christ suffered on the cross, in that it shows the pain and the result of that evil, or that sin, that transgression causes. But again, I don't see the Bible concerned with again making it like an identical, like drawing a line between Jesus suffering exactly the same as human beings will suffer. Like he suffers as a representative of the human race, and but not that his suffering is identical as such. It is very similar for sure. A lot of the pain that Christ went through is very similar, but there are certain pains that the God-man Jesus experienced, which, certain pains he didn't experience, which human beings will experience. I mean, given that Christ was a man and not a woman, it means that the God-man did not experience the pain of rape, for example. But again, he's a representative in the sense that he suffers the utmost suffering, that is death, and the pain that comes with it, and all sorts of different pains along the way, and hence, he bears the penalty, he bears the consequences of sin on our behalf. What? Okay, okay. What do you think of Jordan Peterson? Is that I think this is a question for me. Yeah, this might be the last question. So I just put out my last video yesterday. Was another review of a Jordan Peterson podcast conversation. Um, okay. What do I think of him? Well, I mean, what I love about him, and what I find inspiring is that, and he even says this of himself, what he basically does with his lectures and his podcast is he's figuring things out as he goes. I mean, he has these people on his podcast, or he does these lectures, and that's what he even said about the biblical series lectures. He said, well, I heard him make that statement several times in interviews. He said, well, I was basically trying to figure out what these stories mean as I taught about them. I'm sorry, as I taught through them, as I lectured through them. He was saying, well, I was basically taking the audience along on the journey I was on, just trying to figure things out. And I think that's wow. And you can really see that as he has these conversations with people, he has not made up his mind on a great many things, but he exposes himself to other people in order to make his mind up. And you as a viewer or you as the audience get to experience Jordan Peterson trying to figure things out. I think that's remarkable. I think it's just beautiful. And in fact, it caused me to think, and here's a little announcement. It caused me to think that maybe at some point I should put up a video, and I might actually do this. I mean, don't pin me down quite yet, but I will think about it over Christmas, New Year. It caused me to think whether I should once make a video where I pick one YouTube video, just anyone, which I watch it once first, and then I watch it again, and I put on the camera, and I just respond to what's happening, just like to go through, to give the kind of to give the experience, or give the opportunity to people to think with me on the spot, or to look, to witness me trying to figure out on the spot what's happening. Yeah. Jordan Peterson, I mean, is he a Christian? Is he not a Christian? I mean, he's made, all sorts of, boundary statements, or kind of pushing the boundaries. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth. There were definitely times where he had conversations where he seemed to be just extremely close, if not in the faith, But then there are other times where he makes other statements which are just completely, different, and where he takes a sort of distance, you could say. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm just happy, and I feel. Oh, wait! I just lost my camera. Well, let me take this camera instead for the last seconds. Oh well, that's bad. At this stage, I just feel privileged to. I'm just so happy, to see those conversations happening. That Jordan Peterson has with all these people. Yeah, let me just see, man. My camera just went off. Yeah, and I mean, Jordan Peterson has definitely been a voice for the faith, even though he hasn't explicitly placed himself in the faith. I find that remarkable. I mean, we've had people come through our Bible study who were put on a journey from skepticism towards the faith because of Jordan Peterson, and I mean, it has always been awesome to have these people around, because they share so much insight from what they learned from Peterson when it comes to, again, how to interpret the biblical stories, how to interpret or how to think about God. Yeah, and as Suzanne says, I mean, Jordan Peterson has definitely brought people to the faith, which is awesome. So yeah, let me wrap it up here. Thanks so much, everyone, for hopping along on the channel, for commenting, for supporting, for feedback. I do value that. I'm sorry if I don't always get to respond to every comment. I try my best, and yeah, I do. Again, I'm trying my best to put out content that is helpful, and that is helpful for you guys to share with your friends in order to start, good and fruitful conversations. Yeah, that's about it. Thanks for hopping along. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and good times with your family and friends, and Happy New Year. Next Tuesday, I'm going to put out my next shorts is coming out. It's going to be a special one. Watch the space. And yeah, I'll see you later, guys. And I think we'll do this again, okay? We'll do another live stream at some point to talk about this stuff. How often? Well, I think possibly once a month would probably be a good frequency. So that's what I'm thinking. Again, one of the challenges is the internet in Lebanon. I always have to watch the space when the internet is good and working well. So yeah, thanks everyone. Love you all, and see you later. Bye bye.